¿Qué tal, bueno, peros? Bienvenidos a un nuevo video. El día de hoy es un video emergente, en realidad es un documento que estoy dejando prácticamente sin edición, fuera de las marcas de agua normales de Sonomag. Y es que hoy hubo una sorpresa en el Dell Technologies Forum, este evento de tecnología que hace Dell año con año. Y es que, digo, para no ser muy larga la introducción, se presentó de manera sorpresiva Michael Dell, platicando un poco de el mercado mexicano y de las tendencias tecnológicas que tiene la empresa para con México, ¿no? Entonces, ¿qué les parece si vemos justamente esto? Lo voy a dejar en dos cachitos, es sin edición, fuera obviamente de la marquita de agua que va a tener, pero obviamente más adelante vamos a tener videos relacionados con Dell Technologies Forum. Y bueno, pues nada, esto lo subo de manera inmediata porque entiendo que es un documento periodístico que a mucha gente le interesa. Vamos a verlo.
Thank you, Juan. Full house. Hola, buenos días. Welcome to Mexico, full house we have here, ready to have the session with you. Thank you, Juan. It's great to be back here in Mexico and to see so many fantastic customers and partners. Thank you for joining our Dell Tech Forum, and most importantly, thank you for the trust that you place in Dell Technologies. You know, last year was a record one for our company. We had revenues of over $102 billion. All of that was earned in service of supporting our customers. And while we've all had our share of challenges in this interesting period in world history, we made it through those together. And our business in Mexico, thanks again to the trust that customers place in us, was able to achieve #1 share in all of our major product lines of business, client business, our server business, our storage business, and achieved over $1 billion in revenue. So thank you all very much for that confidence that you place in us. We're very grateful. And look, you all inspire us every day to keep going, to realize your greatest opportunities. As Rolla talked about, the areas that we're focused on for the future, to continue to innovate and move the world forward. And, you know, Mexico also plays an integral role in Dell's global supply chain. As we continue to build a resilient supply chain, Mexico obviously has a super important role within our North American supply chain. And last year, Dell Technologies spent over $12 billion in Mexico. So we are also your customer you know, as a country. Dell is spending and contributing greatly to the Mexican economy. So we look forward to continuing to do amazing things together. And again, thank you all for joining us.
All right. So to start off our Q&A, I think we would like to get deeper into AI. It's right now the hot spot.
Muy caliente. It's the hot topic.
Muy caliente. And as one of the hottest topics right now in technology. So the first question is, how do you see right now, what direction do you see right now AI moving forward? And what advantages does Dell Technologies bring or offer in this new era, in this new age of generative AI?
Yeah, you know, I won't go through all the history here, but those of you who are computer scientists would know that artificial intelligence and machine learning are not new topics, right? They've been around for a long, long time. There have been many waves. Even before you and I were born, these things were around. But now, of course, what we have is an enormous amount of data, more data than ever before, and it's growing at an incredible rate. And also the amount of computing power is, you know, expanding very, very rapidly. And that plus modern computer science is creating this incredible opportunity that we see. And so the real opportunity is, how do you activate that data? and bring it to life to create outcomes and results and success and progress in your organizations. And certainly there are opportunities for efficiency and productivity and cost improvement. Everybody wants those things. But I think that would miss the real opportunity here, which is to reimagine what we can do given all of this power. And nobody quite knows exactly what that would look like. There will be lots of experiments, but I, for one, am incredibly optimistic that this will lead to a great future for the world. And of course, we play a big role in that. I also think there will be a significant proliferation in the way artificial intelligence is used. Right now you see some closed-sourced large language models that are very popular, but also you see a proliferation of open-source large language models. Meta, the parent company of Facebook, recently released their Llama 2 model in an open-source way for commercial use. And so anyone can download this model and run it on their own servers, and even a smaller version of the model, you can run it on your PC, or even some people run these on phones. And so you will see a incredible proliferation of open and closed-sourced large language models. And of course, that's going to require lots of new infrastructure. Here at the forum, we'll be showing off a lot of those new things. And look, the demand for all of this is incredible because it is an enormous jump in capability. And every organization sees that. And so, and we're still at the early stages of this. So I think it's a very exciting area. We're investing heavily here, and but you won't just see AI in a few companies, in a few data centers. It will be everywhere.
Right. And for sure, I mean, certainly these are going to be an exciting time to be in IT, and with all this power that's going to drive in AI, right?
Well, that's right, and the way I see companies, and I talk to business leaders all over the world, they're looking at this AI opportunity not as IT, right? They're looking at it as it's the whole company, right? It's your sales, your marketing, your customer operations, your supply chain, your finance. Everything you do can be improved with artificial intelligence,
right?
And it can make the entire organization much more effective.
Right. An example of that is support service, or with all these things, how can you change the customer experience, right?
Yeah, and all of us are probably using some form of AI and might not even know it. We've been putting AI and machine learning in our products for years, and in your everyday life when you use all kinds of services, AI is finding a way to make that experience better.
Right. Now, if we shift the focus for a little, how do you see right now the edge, right now Dell's commitment to the edge, particularly within this data-centric environment that we're living?
I think it's what I find very interesting is if you think about what is a data center or a cloud, right? It's a place where you take data out of the physical world and take it to this special place to do something with it, so hopefully something good happens, right? Well, what the edge is all about, it's the physical world. It's the real world. It's the world we live in. It's where we drive our cars, and where things happen in factories and retail stores and in hospitals, and all the machines that we see that are connected. And that physical world is becoming far more intelligent, because the cost of embedding a small computer in every single one of the things you see in front of you has gone very, very low. And now they're generating data. And now we have the 5G networks and the 6G networks. And so you're going to see an enormous build out of the edge. And Dell is already the leading provider of infrastructure for the edge. In fact, over 80% of the Fortune 100 companies have Dell as their primary provider of edge solutions. So we're investing heavily here. And as Roland said, I think most of the computing infrastructure in the world in the future will actually be at the edge. Another, and certainly you see this in manufacturing, where you have this sort of collision, if you will, of the OT world and the IT world. And manufacturers are struggling to say, how can they make all that work together? And this is why we created our Native Edge platform that we have rolled out and made available. Another good example of what's going on at the edge is with your smartphone, okay? And 5G is not really so you can talk on the phone faster. You could talk on the phone just as fast with 4G, mostly, right?
Right.
5G is about data, and it's really about things talking with things. And we're not that far away where most of the data that travels over the network has nothing to do with people. It's, machines talking to machines. And so what you have in the world today, you have 7 million data centers. This compares, by the way, to about 600 cloud data centers in the world. 7 million data centers that are these cellular base stations. Every single one of them is becoming a small data center with what you would think of as IT equipment, right?
Right.
But specially designed for these data networks. And of course, that's an area that Dell is in as well. And that's the front end of edge computing, and a very, very important part of how technology will expand in the future, again, to make everything connected, intelligent, to create better outcomes.
And very relevant right now in Mexico. As you know, Mexico is a big manufacturer in the world. And right now, as you said, one of the user cases that we have, it's for manufacturing, right? So actually we're going to have a track on that. So that's very relevant right now. And also another example, it's everything that we have with digital cities. In a big city like this, everything has to do with security and traffic and transportation. That's another relevant user case for that.
Absolutely. I think every industry will find a way to use its data. And look, intelligent connected devices, smart cities, that's going to be our future.
Extra thing that we do at the end, right? We have to build it in from the beginning because look, all of our food supply and our energy and all of our safety depends on these digital systems. So security is incredibly important, and it has to be built in our supply chain. One of the things that we created was this air-gapped data vault for customers that absolutely couldn't fail. These were banks. Back in 2015, the U.S. Treasury Department identified a problem, and they said, hey, if these cyber attacks get really bad, it could shut down the banks, the biggest banks in the world, and people would absolutely panic. That would be horrible. So they went to these big banks and they said, you have to come up with a solution to this problem, because if this happens, even if the president went on TV and told people to calm down, that probably would make them panic even more. And so, come up with a solution. So these banks got together and they said, well, it's Dell Technologies. At the time it was EMC and Dell, just about to come together. You are storing most of this data for us in PowerMax and all these incredible systems that you created. You need to create the solution for us. So we can go back to the Treasury Department. So we sent some of our best engineers off to the labs. We created this Cyber Vault solution, and now we have thousands of customers. It started with the banks, it went to pharmaceuticals, it went to telecom, healthcare, and airlines, and every sector of the economy. And the next step, Roel did a great job, by the way, in outlining all of this, is also zero trust. And the work we're doing with our Project Forward Zero, integrating zero trust into all of our products and all of our solutions to make all of what you do with Dell Technologies more secure and make it easier for you to adopt zero trust. That is an incredibly important part of our future. So over time, we're going to move from just protecting, data to, and to more, managing data and helping you create those outcomes and insights. But also, it's got to be secure.
Right. And talking about data protection and everything, unfortunately, Mexico was the country in Latin America with the highest number of cyber attacks last year. So it is a very relevant topic right now for our customers.
It has to be taken seriously because at the end of the day, every organization is based on some kind of trust and assurance. And that is increasingly a digital experience. And if that's compromised, it calls into question the very foundation of the organization or the society or whatever part of the society you're interacting with, whether it's the government or the hospital or the bank or your retail store or anything else.
Right. And finally, Michael, Dell will be celebrating its 40th anniversary next year. This is a remarkable milestone. Both you and Dell have experienced and witnessed almost every single trend and change in this industry all over these years. Now, if we bring ourselves to this present, how do you feel about the time we're in right now, and what excites you about the future?
It's fun to reflect back on the 40 years, and certainly that's been a lot of fun, but I think it's all the pre-game show. I think what is about to happen in the next 40 years, I think will be way more exciting and interesting. And look, the world continues to transform digitally. We will take some time to celebrate our 40 years, so don't worry too much about that. But the step function change in the amount of data, the amount of computing power, and now the AI, and how that can create better outcomes for all in the world, as was talked about on the last panel. Also, I was able to pick up on some.
Right.
The explosion in the amount of data at the edge. Using that in real time to revolutionize every industry and solve the most difficult problems. I mean, if we had up on the screen here, like the biggest unsolved problems in the world, in energy, in the environment, in safety, in security, in the sustainable development goals, whatever your definition of the biggest problems in the world. Technology will play an enormous role in solving all of those, or at least improving them in the decades to come. And so, what's more exciting than being part of that, right? And so, the work we're doing and all of the solutions that you see our teams developing are in support of that. Our focus on multi-cloud, the work we're doing in 5G and building the most reliable infrastructure, moving to consumption with our Apex model. It all starts with listening to our customers and building the solutions that make you successful.
So Michael, thank you very much for being here in Mexico. Thank you very much for being in our forum, and welcome to Mexico.
Thank you. Great to be with you.